You recently spoke at Westminster College in Missouri, and in your remarks, you shared your concerns about the federal debt, about the viability of Social Security, about gun-related deaths, about obesity. I felt like I was watching a different David Rubenstein. Why now, at 69, are you beginning to speak out about these concerns of yours?
Well, that particular speech was really the 50th anniversary of the Churchill Museum, and that is the site where Winston Churchill gave his famous Iron Curtain speech. And so I tried to lay out the problems that the country has. I said we're not in a Cold War, but we have problems, and I laid out what I thought the problems were. And maybe in my older age, I am trying to be more expressive of my views of things, because if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it?
What concerns you most, David?
Well, generally, I would say in terms of the U.S. economy, I do worry about the debt and the deficit. And I do think that at some point we have to deal with it. I recognize
Feels like you're the only one.
Well, modern monetary theory suggests don't worry about it so much. But remember, modern monetary theory is a theory. It hasn't yet been proven. And I do worry about that. We have $22 trillion of debt. I'm just not sure we can just print enough money to deal with it.
Does a more outspoken David Rubenstein present a risk to Carlyle?
Well, I haven't heard that it does, but if it does, I'm sure I'll hear soon enough. But I'm not saying anything that is different than what Carlyle people probably believe. And I'm not saying anything that hurts our investors. I'm just giving my views on subjects, and people can, accept them or not. I'm just one person's, opinion.
You're not any old person.
Well, I'm an old person, but I would say, look, I generally try to be, like when I do interviewing, I try not to give my views. And generally on speeches, I've historically tried to say, this could be this way, it could be that way. But now I probably feel strongly about some things, but not things that are probably so controversial.
David, you talked in that Westminster speech about the reality that 1% of America's population owns half of America's wealth. If it were up to you, how would you address that situation?
Well, I realize most people say the best way to do it is to confiscate the money from the wealthiest people or have higher tax rates. That can make you feel good at the beginning, but there aren't enough wealthy people to make that difference. What you really have to do, in my view, is educate the people at the bottom. Right now, 14% of the people in this country are functionally illiterate. 1.5 million people are dropping out of high school every year. If we don't get the underclass educated and literate, they're never going to rise up.
And you may very well be right. I'm inclined to believe the same thing, as are many other people. But the immediate problem, of course, is that solution takes generations.
Well, there aren't enough extremely wealthy people that if you took all their money away and you somehow redistribute it, it's going to make the problems of the poor go away. It just isn't going to happen, in my view. So I think you need more sensible positions. But I think the best thing is to do things like get educated and then be part of the American dream. I believe in the American dream, which is you could work hard, come from nothing, and work your way up. Now, I realize I had some advantages over people. I had an intact family, 2 parents. My father had a job. I recognize that was different than some people, but I do think that getting people better educated, and the K-12 problem is the most serious educational problem we have in this country. K-12 isn't working as well as we would like.
So you're a student of history. There was a time not so long ago when kids could get a decent public school education. The likelihood of that happening is much lower now. A working class income could support a mortgage. It's pretty tough these days. And hard work enabled social mobility. That's the American dream you just talked about. What happened to that American dream?
I think, unfortunately, we've separated the economy in ways where they're very wealthy, they're pretty wealthy, and then there's the real underclass. The underclass is not rising up in terms of their income, but also they don't feel they can work their way up.
And the really wealthy are getting a whole lot wealthier.
They are. There's no doubt about it. But if you took all the people in the Forbes 400 and took away all their money and redistributed it, it's not going to solve the problem. In the end, you've got to have people at the bottom of the economic class working their way up and being educated, in my view.
Are you at all worried, David, about the hostility toward Wall Street and toward the wealthy and the mechanisms of wealth creation that we see and hear at the moment in the Democratic Party?
Clearly, the Democratic Party has drifted left from the time when I worked in the White House under President Carter. Carter was the nominee because he was the moderate person then, and the liberals didn't get the nomination. He became president. His positions were more moderate than the liberal Democrats liked. Today, I think the party has drifted further left, and I think that has alienated some people. And I think if the party goes well, let me finish. If the party moves too far to the left, I think it's unlikely they can win the presidential election.
Has it drifted too far left for David Rubenstein?
Well, I have become an independent. I stay out of politics. I don't give money to politicians. I don't get involved in political events. I'm the chairman of the Kennedy Center, chairman of the Smithsonian, and I think it's best to stay out of politics. So I'm divorced from politics. But I think the Democratic Party, probably as an independent, my observation would be that if they don't nominate somebody that is seen as somewhat centrist, I think it's going to be difficult to beat the incumbent president of the United States.
Of the ideas that are taking hold in that in the Democratic debates, of which we just saw the first, which ideas appeal to you most, and which do you reject out of hand?
Well, I think Medicaid for all, Medicare, Medicaid for all, is not likely to be something we can afford. I just don't think we can afford that. So I think a one-payer health care system, while it's been around as an idea for a long time, and your native country has that, right? Canada has that in effect, hasn't worked as well as some people would like. Some people in Canada come here for health care for reasons that you know. And I think that in the United States, it's not likely to work, that we're going to put all the health insurance companies out of business and so forth. I think it's just unrealistic. I think we should try for solutions that are more realistic.
Such as?
Well, I think we can improve Obamacare. I think Obamacare can be improved. Everything can be improved. I think we also have to address Social Security. Social Security in a few years will be technically bankrupt. And when Social Security was started, there were roughly 30-some workers for every retiree or person collecting Social Security. Now it's about 2 or 3. And there aren't enough workers to support the people who are on collecting Social Security. If we don't solve that problem soon, we're going to have to reduce benefits, increase taxes, or increase the age by which you collect Social Security.
No one would disagree that Social Security needs to be fixed. The question is how? Is it via a means test or something else?
Means test is something I've looked at, and I think that it would be a good idea, but it turns out there aren't enough people in the middle income that you can really make a difference. In other words, if you said all wealthy people, all people have an income of $200,000 or more a year, don't collect Social Security, it would make a difference. The median income in the United States for a family of 4 is roughly $65,000 to $70,000. So if you are going to only affect people who are $200,000 and above, you're talking about 2 or 3% of the population. So your means testing isn't going to work because you're going to hit into the heart of the real middle class. I think what you're going to have to either have higher growth rates, which is hard to do. You're going to have to increase the tax. When Social Security was first started, it was a 1% tax on the first $4,000 of income. Now it's over $100,000. It's a higher percentage. I think you're probably going to have to increase it at some point, or you're going to have to cut benefits either by making the age higher before you retire or just cut the level of benefits. None of those are attractive, and that's why nobody wants to deal with it. I hope we can form a presidential commission similar to the one that Alan Greenspan chaired when Ronald Reagan was president, and will have to be done after the next presidential election. Nobody's going to talk about this before the presidential election.